Welcome to Daily Meditation with Sangha Live.
So welcome to this second day of daily meditation practice with Sangha Live. I'm very happy to be here again. It's always a joy and pleasure to be here with actually several of the names I recognize now. So I feel like we're I don't know if we're old friends, but we're certainly Dharma brothers and Dharma sisters. And the general theme of this month that George asked me to explore was interconnectedness. And the theme of the week that I chose was Dharma practice in a polarized world. Why? Because we are living through perhaps the most polarized time in our lifetime. I used to say that during COVID, but I think it's even worse now. Could be wrong. But then again, I live in Israel. I live in the Middle East. And oh my God, we won't get into that. But polarity abounds. And there's one thing that I am convinced of. I'm living here about 17 years. In the first 8 years that I lived here, I actually worked in the West Bank quite a bit in a nonprofit organization called Aikido Without Borders. We bring Israelis, Palestinians together for Aikido. And it's the worst I've ever seen it now, clearly. But it was bad back then. But when I moved here, there was still some Oslo hope for peace and two states, and all that was happening. And my project was really based on, basically all my Aikido practice, because I'm an Aikido teacher for 40 years, all my Dharma practice, knowing that there is a better way that we can all live together in humanity. I think that everybody on this call, most people that are doing Dharma work, kind of believe that. We believe it in our bones, in our soul, in our consciousness, whatever you want to say. And then maybe one way or the other, maybe we even work in that way to create bridges, to create understanding, to create interconnectedness, intersubjectivity, where we understand each other. Oh my God. And you could say there's all kinds of problems and all kinds of reasons for just the horror that we're seeing in the world today. We could, what do you say? We could subscribe blame here and there, and okay, whatever. But I'm convinced, and I challenge anybody to change my mind. I'm open to being changed, my mind being changed. But I'm convinced that polarization is the fundamental issue. Because polarization means that the spectrum has been broken, and one pole and the other pole do not connect. And that leads to the conditions for all kinds of problems, from just simple misunderstandings to holy wars. And if our practice, our Dharma practice, has any benefit for society, for humanity, it's to heal that. It is a healing practice that we're doing. So then what is Dharma practice in a polarized world? We're going to talk a little bit about polarities today. And before I do so, I do want to say one thing that part of Buddhist teachings, certainly my teacher used to speak about this a lot, is spiritual resiliency. And the way that he would define spiritual resiliency was really interesting because, in the West, kind of modern, postmodern psychological understanding of resiliency is the time and degree to which we recover from being destabilized in one way or the other. That's kind of resiliency. But he had a very interesting definition, Sadhu Pandita. He would define spiritual resiliency as withstanding power and repelling power. Withstanding power, the power to withstand. Imagine you're standing in a hurricane and it's just coming and you're just able to be there without having to run for cover. That would be the withstanding power. And repelling power is to keeping things out that maybe are harmful to allow in. Basically, this is boundaries. We're talking about boundaries. When we open boundaries and allow things in, and sometimes allowing in unpleasant things like conflicts and disagreements and friction between me and another person, that's not so easy. But if I have the spiritual capacity, if I have the resiliency to withstand that, then it can lead to healing. In fact, it certainly is one of the conditions for leading to healing: withstanding power, the ability to open my boundaries and allow. Repelling power is the ability to put boundaries, healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries that are still says, yes, there's a boundary. I still say yes to you, but I'm going to say no to certain behaviors, a healthy boundary. So while we talk about polarity, if any of this stuff, triggers you in one way, then I don't think it will, but just remember that working with polarities, especially working with polarization, we always have the choice to allow in. We always have a choice to boundary. That was my whole point in making that. Tibetans have a beautiful teaching, the Tibetan Buddhist, of a boat. A sailboat, the old kind that you had the ropes and the mast and the crew. And for the boat to function optimally, the crew has got to be shipshape. They have to have discipline. If there's any lazy sailors, it's going to be a problem for the ship. So a crew is always taught to be sensitive and ready to tie ropes. And I'm not a sailor, so whatever they do, swap the deck. It has to be ship shape. Discipline is absolutely necessary, and you can relate that to our meditation practice. Any practice, for that matter, a certain amount of that kind of discipline, a certain amount is beneficial, but it must be balanced with freedom. Because when a ship is really shipshape with good discipline, then and only then is it free to go anywhere in the seven seas. That is a healthy polarity. Discipline balanced with freedom. You may have a certain Icarus, tendency. Like, usually when I was young, I certainly did. When I was younger. Sorry. You may have a certain Icarus tendency in you without discipline. And we know the story of Icarus. The freedom led to his demise. You also may have a certain Sisyphus tendency, pushing that boulder up with discipline, but no freedom. And that also led to his imprisonment. He was basically condemned to a life of toil because there was no freedom. He could just step aside, be free of the boulder, and that would be his life. But he didn't. He accepted his punishment. Both of those are long stories, interesting stories. I'm not getting into them. But when polarity is healthy, it's like the ship in the Tibetan story. When polarity is broken, it becomes like Sisyphus and Icarus. That's what it means to live in a polarized world. I'm going to share my screen for a moment and while we go into polarity. And this is also kind of coming from a Tibetan tradition, a beautiful tanka, a beautiful iconography of polarity. So this is the icon of the masculine Buddha and the feminine Buddha, represented as a male Buddha and his female consort. The male Buddha is dark blue, and he's sitting in perfect meditation. Dark blue is kind of a representation of pure consciousness. The female Buddha is white, and this is kind of skin color there, whatever skin color is. But usually she's white, the opposite color of the dark blue, and sitting on his lap. He's in a lotus position. She's in a lotus position, but with her legs wrapped around him. They're in sexual embrace, sexual union. And he is all consciousness. She is all feeling. The male Buddha, or the masculine Buddha here, is represented as pure witnessing. And as the symbol demonstrates, he's penetrating reality in sexual union. He's pure witnessing what? Everything that arises in reality. The feminine Buddha is not witnessing, but rather feeling. He's witnessing everything in reality. She is everything in reality. This is the fundamental spiritual duality. If spirituality is one, if God is one, if the universe is one, if non-duality, if the ultimate, well, there's kind of paradoxically two absolute spiritual states. One of them equals 0, the other one equals 1. Here we go, another polarity, binary. 0 is the kind of the early Buddhist Theravada tradition of non-self. 1 is the later Mahayana Vajrayana absolute realization of oneness. Yeah. Together, they represent oneness. He is the pure observer of everything that's arising in the universe. It arises, stays for a while, and it passes away. She is everything that arises in the universe. And they are in a perfect union, a perfectly balanced polarity, like a yin and a yang. He is penetrating as he observes everything that's arising in the universe. She is penetrated as she is everything arising in the universe. This is the fundamental duality. And the fundamental duality to the universe is a polarity in perfect balance. So we're going to use this kind of icon as a representation of the goal of our practice. We could say a few different things about what is the goal of practice, including just be here now. But whatever the case, there are these two fundamental dualities. And if you think of the masculine spiritual essence, I'm not saying male, female, I'm not talking, this has nothing to do with gender. Generally speaking, and it's good to have generalizations because they orient us, but an orienting generalization is that usually men are more kind of on the masculine end of the spectrum in that icon. Some are kind of in the middle, perfectly balanced in the middle. And then some are even on the other side of the spectrum, more on the feminine side of the spectrum. Not to get caught up in gender stuff, that's not my point. Generally speaking, an orienting generalization, women are born on the feminine side of the spectrum, feminine spiritual essence. They connect more with that. Some are in the middle, and then some are even on the other side of the spectrum. The point is, this fundamental duality in perfect union, in this case, or a yin and a yang, could also be seen as a spectrum. One end of the spectrum has a plus, let's say. The other end of the spectrum has a minus. One end of the spectrum is up. The other end of the spectrum is down. All of these healthy polarities that exist in life. One of the end of the spectrum is masculine. The other end is feminine. And the point is that spectrum, the whole spectrum, is you and it is me. We may exist somewhere along that spectrum. In fact, today I exist in a different place on that spectrum than I did 20 years ago. I've moved, I've done work and I've moved. I'll confess that I was more on the masculine side and It's not really a confession. I just kind of that's how I oriented naturally. I don't know if culture trained me to be that way, but I think there was also a natural essence there. And I've done work that have moved me more to the middle and even to the other side of the spectrum, because I felt I was out of balance or disconnected. Whatever the case, our practice, as soon as we get up and step off the cushion, or get up from the cushion and step into life, we're going to be meeting polarities wherever we go, always. And we'll relate to them from where we're at. The problem is when I find myself on one side of the pole, I'm kind of a liberal. I say kind of liberal. I've always been a liberal. These days, I don't know, it's a little bit more kind of, I guess, blended somehow. But, conservative, politically speaking, was always on the other side of the spectrum. But now I was like, okay, yeah, there's certain things I'm like, oh, come on, we can do better. That's my feeling. But certain things I'm like, okay, no, I get you. I get you. I get you. I still feel like I'm a liberal, yeah. But I feel more connected with the spectrum. But maybe we can also relate to times where we just did not accept the opposite pole. It just, it goes against something in us. It could be political differences. It could be uh, gender stuff, like the battle of the sexes type of thing, macho men and feminists and whatever. These are stereotypes, but just, things that create polarity. They create polarization. And maybe sometimes polarization is necessary. We have to bring that in. We have to kind of bring that in. Maybe sometimes polarization, beautiful. Maybe sometimes polarization is necessary. But our practice, if you see your Dharma practice, the Buddha was considered metaphorically, a perfect doctor. And he could prescribe the perfect medicine for healing the world. If you consider your practice to be something along the lines of healing the world, then plant your flag, wherever you are on that spectrum. Advocate for your truth, absolutely. But we have to be able to heal polarization. If we don't heal polarization, it just kind of leads to problems. I'm kind of speaking the world right now, but it's the same inside of us. Our Dharma practice in a polarized world, our Dharma practice in a polarized self is to heal that. And of course, it all begins with healing ourself. I was mentioning yesterday how interconnectedness is, I equate it the same as interbeing. It's just not how I used to say. And as intersubjectivity. Interconnected, it means, like the Buddha, you have this penetrating wisdom. Not aggressive, not invasive. Yeah. So if this is already like, that's probably your intuition is clear, is good there. When I say penetrating, I don't mean aggressive. I don't mean invasive. Wisdom will let us know if, hang on, I need to respect this boundary. Hang on. So, okay, I can be a little bit more intuitive. Like I was saying yesterday, if we really want to understand somebody, we have to listen to them. Click, 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 listen. We're a few degrees away from getting them from their inside. When I get them from their inside, that's kind of, I'm penetrating a little bit deeper into the wisdom of this situation. I'm gaining clarity. That's half of the poem. The other half of the poem is we have to allow ourselves to be penetrated by reality. A person who is easy to let go of boundaries, that's an easy thing to do. For some of us who are more boundaried up, and maybe we have good reasons that life kind of forced us to be boundaried up. Maybe you've been in wars. That's going to be more challenging. Okay, fine. Yeah. But that's our work. And of course, it is important to put boundaries where boundaries need to be put. Again, that's the caveat. But if we're going to allow ourselves to move into this fundamental spiritual essence, we need to have these dual qualities of the clarity of wisdom, which penetrates, and the acceptance of compassion, which allows to come in. The way that this would, or the way I'd like to connect this to our practice, is with two basic meditation mindfulness methods. I would recommend learning both of these methods, simple methods. I'll tell you in just a moment. And depending on where you're at in your practice, you may feel that one needs to be applied, and the other needs to be applied. The first one is one-pointed awareness, one-pointed focus. Put your mind on the breath and just tell me about the breath. If you've seen me do the hot seat interviews, you can say I'm kind of holding people's feet to the fire. It's like, no, that's interesting. That's good. All good. But tell me about the breath. What's going on there? It's just a way to see into things. And it requires that we have this, like the Buddha in this icon that George just posted, sitting there, pure witnessing it. It requires that we're able to stay one pointed and see that. That is a mindfulness method. It is important to develop that. Why? Because that's where the penetrating wisdom comes from. Seeing in the true nature of reality. Seeing what? Seeing all this phenomena, my sensations, whatever, my thoughts, my feelings, or seeing the deeper universal characteristics of impermanence. Yes, there's all these different characteristics, but fundamentally it's all impermanent. Fundamentally it's all unsatisfactory, dukkha. Fundamentally it's all non-self. It's all empty. Penetrating wisdom helps us gain that. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed in our practice. But it needs to be balanced. Balanced with what? Let's go to the opposite pole in our spectrum. Open awareness. I'm not going to take objects and fix my mind on any one thing. I'm going to let go. I'm going to let be. I'm going to let come. I'm just going to let it grow. Let the process grow. Open awareness, choiceless awareness. Both of these are great practices, important practices. And today I think I want to do a little bit of a guided meditation for both. Okay, so I'll give a bit of a guidance at the beginning. I'll give a bit of guidance in the end, and then we're going to finish off there. Okay? You guys ready to practice? So, taking your seat like the Buddha in our icon, or taking your seat like the masculine spiritual essence Buddha, like in our icon, or taking your seat like the feminine spiritual essence Buddha in our icon. You are free to choose. And we'll start with the one-pointed awareness. And when you're practicing one-pointed awareness, you must establish a foundation for your mindfulness. You must establish an anchor point. It can be in the body. It can be a sensation. It can be a feeling. It can be the breath at the nose. It can be the breath traveling from the nose through the body. It can be the breath in the belly. But establishing your mindfulness, making the energetic effort to place your mindfulness, for example, on the breath. I'm going to teach as if we're watching the breath. Please feel free to do whatever you like. But placing your mindfulness on the breath, I'll even suggest the breath in the belly, but again, you're free to do as you like. And finding one point, again, this is the energetic effort, the vidya part of our practice. We make the energetic effort to hold the breath, the mindfulness on the breath in the belly as you breathe in, hold the mindfulness on the breath in the belly as you breathe out. Establishing a one-pointed awareness. Should the mind drift off or get distracted, all good. In fact, if one-pointed focus is not your daily method, then there might even be some resistance to this because it challenges the status quo. And that will be a good challenge. So stay with it if possible. And know, this is where mindfulness comes in, know the sensations, the qualities, and the characteristics in the movement of the belly as you breathe in. Know the qualities, characteristics, and sensations in the movement of the belly as you breathe out. Should the mind start to drift up to the chest with the breath, keep it, bring it back with discipline. You have choice. Bring it back with discipline to one point or a general point in the belly, and anchoring your mindfulness into sensations as you breathe in, knowing how these sensations change and evolve as you breathe out. Following the in-breath to its completion, knowing if there's a pause or no pause at the end of the in-breath. Should there be a pause, know the quality of that pause, even if it's momentary. Following the movement and sensations in the belly as you breathe out. Knowing if there's a pause or no pause at the end of the out-breath. Should there be a pause, knowing the quality of that pause, even if it's just for a moment. And from that pause, knowing the precise beginning of the next in-breath. This is our one-pointed, focused mindfulness meditation. As your mind sustains this one-pointed focus, concentration will penetrate deeper. And what that means is you will begin to see more and know more about the movement of the belly with the in-breath and the out-breath. And continue to do so. If the mind gets distracted or wanders off, simply be mindful of that and bring it back to the one-pointed awareness of the breath. While you're focusing in a one-pointed manner, notice if the mind is getting tight or if there is too much effort. One-pointedness itself is not effortful, although we may feel like we are making effort. Should that be a case, then just bring your mindfulness to the efforting in the mind. Know it, know its qualities and characteristics. And if you can observe it with mindfulness, just know what happens to it. It might become more intense, but when you have good observation, good differentiated awareness, in other words, mindfulness, usually that efforting will relax. Then return back to the one-pointed observation of the breath. As you continue to observe in a one-pointed manner, if it's not happening for you, it's completely fine. Whatever arises in your practice is your path. So acceptance is first and foremost. Knowing that, knowing the qualities and characteristics of that, distractions or restlessness or even sleepiness or whatever, accept that. Be gentle with yourself. Relax, create some space around that. And then when it calms a bit, return to the breath in a one-pointed manner. When you find the balance in this form of observation, the one-pointed awareness, you'll also notice that there's a lot of space, open space around the one-pointed focus. You're not closing down, that the mindfulness is penetrating deeper into the experience, but at the same time, there's an open space around it. Even though the one-pointed focus is the primary experience. When the balance is met, you'll find a supportive spaciousness around that. And if it helps you to reflect for a few moments on the dark blue Buddha in our icon, in the Thangka, and just connect with the energy of the masculine spiritual essence, whether it's your nature or not. We all have access to this quality. This is our practice. And now we're going to relax a bit the energy of the masculine spiritual essence, the one-pointed focus of mindfulness, and allow your mindfulness, allow your mind to open up to the field of practice. Perhaps it's better to say the field of your interior, the space on the inside, which includes everything in your experience. And this awareness, open awareness, is choiceless. A momentary itch on the cheek may call the attention, but it goes naturally. A fullness of breath may bring your attention into that, but it's a natural movement. There might be some resistance or tension or even physical pain in the body. It calls choiceless awareness. And choiceless awareness opens and allows that pain, for example, or the itch or the sensation to penetrate deeper into consciousness with total acceptance, total embrace, total feeling. If it's helpful to reflect for a few moments on the feminine spiritual essence in the picture of the Buddha and his consort, the masculine Buddha and the feminine Buddha. Masculine Buddha observing everything in the universe. Take a deep breath. The feminine spiritual essence is everything in the universe. Choicelessly, openly, and compassionately. Should you find the mind fixating on a thought or a feeling or a memory, no problem. This is all part of the universe. Whatever's arising is our path, and choiceless awareness is in full acceptance of this as well. But as we reorient our practice, reorient ourselves from the fixation into choiceless awareness, notice the opening back up, notice the freedom, and notice how the fixation, when fully embraced, melts, lets go, dissolves, returns to where it came from, which is emptiness. And as we move into the final few minutes, allow your mind, allow your heart to once again reflect on the icon of the masculine Buddha and the feminine Buddha in sexual union, with pure observing of everything and pure feeling as everything, with one pointed awareness and choiceless open awareness. Allow this icon to rest in you as one, not as a duality, not as a polarity, not as a polarization, but as a perfect polarity. Feeling the body, feeling the breath, knowing your mental state, and feeling the heart. Feeling the space on the inside. And as you slowly open your eyes, coming out of the meditation, feel the space on the outside around you.
Today's podcast is an offering to you from our archive of freely available live daily classes. We make wisdom teachings and meditations as freely available as possible to as many people as wish to practice. You can help ensure we can continue to support a worldwide Sangha by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts, by sharing this with someone who'd be interested, and by offering a small financial support at sangha.live/donate.